I said, I was like, somehow this is going to come back.
I wish you would. So far, maybe
Well, I sent it to Robert, but I copied.
Yeah?
I mean, I ended up leaving.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started with the Gardner City Council work session this evening. The first and only item for discussion this evening is our growth management strategy. And I believe we're welcoming Larry Powell to the podium. Larry, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Councilman. Tonight we're going to have a discussion on the growth management strategy for the future of Gardner. If our button would work. Thank you. The comprehensive plan and the ED strategy and ED incentive plan have been adopted, and steps have been started to implement the vision, goals, and objectives of these documents. Current work in progress includes the Land Development Code rewrite, which is about 40% completed, and a meeting is scheduled for October 20th in City Hall for the public to give input on the 6 discussion papers that have been written. The actual rewriting of the municipal code is the next step in the process, and a draft is expected to be completed by the end of 2015 for your review and for the document to be completed in 2016. In addition, 2 sub-area plans have been completed, their meetings with the property owners, and a land use plan for the 2 sub-areas are under development. The growth management strategy tonight is focused on the areas of the community that have the highest growth potential, utilizing our limited resources. The Gardner Comprehensive Planning Area Map was used to identify land that would qualify as a conduit for community growth and labels them as having long, mid, and short-term growth potential. The concept for the growth areas was created by reviewing existing land patterns, future land development plans, and identifying areas of urbanization. The red dotted line on the map is the annexation agreement line between the communities of Gardner and Olathe that extends up to 127th and west on 127th between Gardner and DeSoto. During the prioritization of the growth areas into long, mid, or short term, additional consideration was given by reviewing the following areas: improving infrastructure, accommodating development, buffering neighborhoods, improving traffic flow, and future access to Interstate 35. Also, the amount of CIP that might be needed and the benefits that would be gained in developing these areas. The long-term growth area, shown in dark green, surrounds the city and extends out into the planning area and is based on the future land use map as shown in the Gardner Comprehensive Plan. The long-term areas have basic road systems in place based upon the county mile system, have assigned water service, and will need capital investment in order to develop sewer and electrical utilities. The long-term area shown contains approximately 10,739 acres, and is quite extensive. The areas in green that are inside the city limits are pretty well protected by state law from annexation by other cities. There is an extended long-term growth area, which is even larger, and we will touch briefly on tonight. This extended long-term growth area would follow 127th Street between DeSoto and Gardner on the north. It would stop at the Douglas County line on the west and extend south between Waverly Road and the Gardner-Olathe Annexation Agreement line on the east, stopping at the Miami-Johnson County line to the south. This area is shown in the darker blue-green and contains an additional 28,341 acres. Since we are not planning on doing any annexation in any long-term or extended growth areas at this time, no annexation costs have been developed for those areas. As the mid and short-term areas are built out, and as our 5-year CIP plan is reviewed every year, new mid and short-term areas will be developed, and the CIE plan will roll into a 5-year plan on an annual basis. Midterm growth areas, shown in orange, are peripheral to the city and have high potential for growth and industrial development. The initial focus for this development will be at the intersections of 175th and 191st Streets, adjacent to I-35, and they have direct access to very large tracts of property. These areas do have basic road systems in place, have partial city services located in or adjacent to the property, and have water district utility providers in place. They may require some capital investment in the forms of sanitary sewer systems, and the proposed study area south of I-35 contains approximately 4,200 acres that you've looked at previously, but the midterm growth areas in orange contain approximately 1,172 acres of that 4,200 acres. As land develops around these areas, additional growth is expected to occur along the south side of I-35 and between 191st and 175th Streets. At some point in the future, an access road that will connect these intersections will need to be developed through Moonlight Road. When this access road is in place, additional midterm growth property will be available and will have great visibility for I-35 and will become highly desirable. Midterm annexation cost for the 175th Street area is fairly limited. Being the basic roads are in place, water would be served by Water District 1, so the cost would be associated to that company, and electricity abuts the area on 171st and Cedar Niles Road. However, sewer is lacking in the area. Build-out for sewer final design and sewer costs are estimated to be at $3 million. However, none of this cost is considered in the annexation plan because local development cost can be developed by the developer and using holding tanks or lift stations instead of a long-term sewer plan. Electrical service at the property lines of both 175th and Cedar Niles is available, but extension further into the site would be estimated at approximately $200,000. This is a diagram of the sanitary sewer layout that we just discussed, and you may have seen in the past. The plan calls for the sanitary sewer system to be a gravity flow system extending from the 175th Street area down to 191st, and then would be a flow line would be built to get the service over to a lift station at 191st. This would open up additional area in the midterm growth area along 175th Street. Sanitary sewer service can be handled temporarily with the holding tanks or a small lift station that could go over to the Walmart area, but a major sewer system would be needed and would need to be developed within 3 to 5 years after the area was annexed and was developed. Midterm annexation costs on 191st Street are basically zero at this point in time because the basic roads are all in place. Water would be served by Water District 7. Gardner has sewer in place at Olathe RV area as a lift station, and Gardner Electric is in place on South Gardner Road. But for the purpose of computing the annexation cost, we're not looking at any needed extensions into area at this time. Midterm growth opportunities would take place once annexation occurs across the city limits at 175th Street into that area on the south side. At 191st Street, the growth area would be increased and additional midterm growth areas become available. Both of these annexation areas would assist the city by creating commercial and industrial development areas to come into existence, and development of these areas will require partnerships with both the existing landowners, water system operators, Johnson County, and the Kansas Department of Transportation. Midterm growth areas are affected at the Waverly short-term growth area along the 191st Street, giving Gardner the opportunity to improve the transportation network shown in red on this map. Development of 191st will allow for the movement of trucks out of the intermodal and logistics park area onto I-35 and off of US 56 once a corridor is completed. The short-term growth area shown in red on the map contains approximately 637 acres and is immediately adjacent to the city limits. The existing road system, of course, is in place. It has access to our city services and Water District 7 services, and may need minimum additional expenditures to develop in the road system. The short-term annexation costs at Waverly Road for the purpose of community annexation plans are basically at zero, and that's because water, sewer, and electrical in place along with the road system. The annexation costs at the Gardner Airport, again, are basically at zero because the roads, water, and sewer are in place along 175th Street, and Gardner Electric extends service into the area at this point in time. Short-term opportunities will exist for us in the Waverly Road area, existing as we will not require minimal capital investment and is located in a high-growth industrial area. It is our expectation that intermodal growth on these properties will continue, as well as logistics support services. If the city wants to control the growth that will continue next to its existing residential areas in this area, they will need to annex the property that will allow for the city to plan for the growth of these areas, and that will help buffer our existing residential areas for more intensive uses. The short-term opportunities at the Gardner Airport will also be of low capital investment. The airport surrounding the property surrounding the airport needs very little capital investment at this time, as the comp plan identifies the area as industrial and commercial. The expectation is that the city would target airport-compatible businesses, buffer existing residential areas to the north, and enhance existing airport operations. So what are our next steps? We would like for the council to consider the following items. Council consensus for staff to move forward to contact landowners in the short and midterm areas and to develop annexation agreements. Items for the discussion on those agreements probably would include property tax issues, development cost, infrastructure, and timing of the process itself. Additionally, we would need to develop the capital improvement elements for the long-term areas and midterm areas and work them into the capital improvement plan from a 20 to a 5-year process. Such items might include sanitary sewer upgrades or the extension of sanitary sewer service, road network upgrades, especially on the 191st Street corridor, and electrical system upgrades as needed. This brings us to the point where council discussion needs to have a discussion and to help direct staff in the future direction they wish to go.
Okay. Thank you, Larry. Hang tight for just a second. We'll open the floor for public comments regarding the discussion item. If there's anyone in attendance that would like to make a public comment regarding our discussion item for this evening, now's your opportunity to step to the podium and state your name and address for the record and be heard. Okay, with no one coming forward, Larry, come on back and council questions for Larry or other staff members?
I have one, Larry. You said that 175th Street as an example, we could use the lift station to pump stuff back over waste to the Walmart area. Is that correct? Depending upon how the exact layout of that development would occur, staff has worked with Public Works to look at the possibilities of how sewer could be put into the area. Right. The development of the area initially could be handled through the use of holding tanks on site. Okay. But as the capacity for those tanks was exceeded and growth continues to occur, there is the opportunity for basically a throwaway system to be put into place. Okay. And you could extend sewer service basically over to what would be the Walmart lift station area. Do we have any idea on a rough cost on that versus just installing a new system? I know it's going to be less, but for a throwaway, that's what I'm wondering that cost that.
Brian,
I think
Brian's
worked in on that.
That's one of the things, we haven't actually developed a cost for that. Okay. Based on what we presented to council a few months ago, we presented actually kind of a short-term, just serve that one property. Right. Versus do we extend further to the south to open up more development? The consensus of the council at that time was, let's not look at basically the throwaway options, let's try to see how much we can get into develop. So we don't have a cost at that time. Okay, all right, thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So in talking to people at both 175th Street and 191st Street at some of the meetings that were held, one of the, at least for the vacant property owners, for the property owners with undeveloped land, one of the most significant prohibitors for them to agree to annexation right now is the increased property tax. So I guess, are you asking us to provide direction on whether we would essentially abate those taxes for a time period so that they consider to pay their existing tax and no city tax on top of that? I guess I'm looking for, is that the type of conversation that you want to have with them?
At this point in time, what we're looking for is permission from council or consensus from council to go and start conversations with those folks and actually identify the areas of concern with them. We would expect that in the 19th meeting, we would actually bring back some suggestions for you as economic incentives that could be used not only for the development, but could be used in annexation incentive agreements. So we would like to bring that back to you, those thoughts back to you on the 19th, when we have the next study session. So, no, I don't have an answer for you now. Yes, I'm sure that would be one of the things that we would need to discuss with the property owners, and we certainly have some thoughts about that, but we would like to bring those to you on the 19th.
So my second question, and I don't know if this would be part of the 19th or if this is longer term, but during specifically the discussions out at 191st Street, there were some property owners whose land is landlocked, basically, due to decisions that have been made, and they have asked for some options for a transportation plan that would basically provide streets to their property so that as their property is up for sale, they can, communicate to buyers what that option is. So is something like that being looked at as well?
The transportation network for the area is under consideration. We are aware of I believe it's 20 acres approximately, that is surrounded, to some apartments on the north side. There are 3 tracks on the south side and some additional privately owned property on the east. And then, of course, the area to the west is one large farming tract. Based on annexation issues, if we were to talk to the farmer to the west, the property owner to the west, and we were able to convince them that they should become part of the city of Gardner, I would assume that the best area would be then to develop a road system that would come in from that direction and service that area. But that is only one consideration. Different areas could be developed. For example, from the east, a road could be built in that was replatted in the last year or so. But there are places through that property, which is undeveloped currently, that a road system certainly could be developed to enter that 20 acres of property. So yes, that definitely needs to be considered as transportation is put together for that area. That property owner would definitely need to be involved in our discussions with how those will occur.
Steve,
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go
So I
ahead.
just have one last question specifically about that property. So when we were doing the sub-area meetings for that area, what's a little bit unique about that is there's a tract of houses that basically border unannexed property on 199th Street, and many of those property owners attended those meetings. So would the goal be to also approach those property owners? In my mind, if those property owners were willing to annex, then you create an environment where the land in between kind of becomes a natural evolvement into the city of Gardner. So will there be discussions with those individual homeowners as well?
If it's within the midterm area that's orange, located on 191st, yes, we would like to talk to those owners initially. We felt like the best growth potential for our community in the midterm areas are those 2 smaller orange areas that are south of Interstate 35. So yes, everyone that would be involved inside that at some point in time, we would like to contact and see what their position is on annexation and what they would be willing to consider.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Sitting in those meetings about the sub-area plan, the 199th Street folks especially, while most people are reticent to annex into the city and start paying a city mill that they previously hadn't had to, the people on 199th Street are hoping for improvements on their roads. And where Christie was suggesting earlier that maybe some of the people that are, you know, if we could get them to annex in and maybe abate their taxes for a little while we don't really do anything for them other than provide them the protection of being in the city. On 199th Street, we've actually got infrastructure that we know that they want built, especially with, and Brian, you can let me know if I'm correct here, but they're wanting traffic calming to occur on 199th Street, so they don't have 18-wheelers bouncing down the road at 55 miles an hour. They want, they want things like roundabouts to slow it down or to eliminate the truck traffic, correct?
That is correct.
That's true.
So, yeah, I think the people on 199th Street are people that require a tremendous amount of attention, because if we could annex them into the city limits, then we've got an opportunity for infill between what is already Gardner and what is recently established.
Made notes, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna piggyback on what Christina said. I think she's absolutely correct. I think we need to make arrangements with the folks for doing annexation, and I've been pushing for aggressive annexation policy for quite a while. I think we need to work out, I know we cannot abate them on the front end. There are certain statutory restraints that prohibit us from just waiving city property tax
Right.
for completely, but we can do some cash incentives to try to keep the impact on those homeowners as minimal as possible, understanding that there's nothing going to be happening at those locations initially. Now, once developers purchase that property, if there is development, then we would remove those incentives because they wouldn't be needed anymore.
Correct.
But I think that we're almost past due on some of these discussions on annexation, particularly in the short-term areas that are in red. We've already lost 3 or 4 very important parcels on the east side of Waverly Road, and North Point's not stopping. They're gonna try to get every single square foot of what's left.
True.
And so I would say, if we haven't started discussions with those folks regarding annexation, that's gotta happen, and it's gotta happen like yesterday. So, we don't have a lot of time, but we're behind the 8 ball on that.
I'm just curious, Laura, with what would an average, and it's probably hard to say average because there's so many different size parcels on the east side of I-35, but that's, pretty much that's all zoned agricultural, so the assessments are ag, which aren't assessed at the same level that,
Negligible.
yeah.
Agriculture's 30%, while your residences are 11.5, so about 3%. I mean, less than 30% of an agricultural value, which agricultural value is far less.
Yes.
So,
And so I don't know.
So, yeah,
about average, I mean.
but yeah, that's, I
I'm
mean,
pulling up my own tax bill, look at my ag, but I don't know if that would still be average. Average is, agriculture is very, very minimal.
so part of the strategy would probably have to be that we let them keep those ag designations until just the bitter last second, before we start changing zoning and developing property. I mean, isn't that what you would think of, Ryan or Cheryl, somebody? Or Larry?
I think we have a couple options. We could obviously look at some of the things that they want us to provide in terms of services, because they do have some transportation concerns that might be attractive. I think we also look at what kind of infrastructure is out there that we control in terms of cost. I mean, you basically set your rate schedule, so you have an opportunity to look at that. But I think what we're looking for is, generally, if you're open to it, being able to come back and present kind of a menu of options that might make it worth their while to be in the city.
Yeah, if you're asking for consensus, I mean, you have definitely my consensus, and as far as the how, that's what I
We
would.
would go back and work, yes,
Everyone else.
we would go back and work that.
Yeah, as I said, annexation should be right up there at the very top of our priority list, particularly in Waverly Road and these interchanges. I would also recommend, and I'll see if there's any consensus amongst the dais here, but these parcels right along I-35 on both sides, if we're talking about putting in road access and particularly frontage road access, we're gonna need to annex these properties, and that's gonna be our responsibility. So I would almost say, anything within like 250 to 300 feet of either side of, of I-35.
I'd agree, because I think that's
Needs to
where
be on
road
that
needs to be.
midterm, that midterm growth area.
That road needs to be there.
Absolutely,
Well, yeah, purchase the right of way,
absolutely.
annex them into the city. Now, that could get costly, but, folks in Gardner have gotten pretty proud of their property values ever since the intermodal moved in next door.
I understand.
However, fair market, would be the determining factor if we had to take
we're also-
eminent domain step or something.
Well, we're also doing those landowners a favor by putting access into their property, so it's a two-way street.
I agree with you that you have to be careful when you start talking about doing landowners a favor. They have a different idea of that
I
on
understand
occasion.
that, I understand that.
Other questions, comments?
I'm interested in, just the bottom line. Short term, we're looking at $3 million, right, for the one,
Our short-term costs, we are estimating for annexation would just be basically our administrative cost to annex.
okay,
So the processes that we would need to do would basically just to contact, get a letter of agreement, file the proper paperwork, if it's a willing annexation that we go through with, or if it's a letter of agreement that sets up the process that will take place in the near future. There is no cost basically associated other than the cost needed to draw the documents and to publish the proper paperwork. So the administration cost is what we're talking about. There is no infrastructure cost that we see that is needed to create an annexation plan, which is part of the state requirement for when you go through the annexation
right.
process.
I was referring to the $3 million under annexation costs under sanitary in the third row, midterm area 1, I-35, 175th, that's for the sewer.
That's our estimate of a non-throwaway build-out cost for the sanitary sewer for the 175th Street properties and south, down to about 100, I think it's 191st.
Yeah.
And then it would be a lift station from there back over to the 191st interchange area to get back into the gravity flow system. That cost is not a throwaway cost. That's what we're estimating it would cost us to take to use the best topographic of the creeks in the area for gravity flow to open the largest amount of property for development. Now, as collector lines have to be built to get into that arterial system, just like a road system, most of that cost is borne by the developer as they build that out. So our initial investment is creating the trunk line, the main system itself, that would then go into place. And as Brian's talked about to you previously, that estimate is an estimate that we put in place to try and use the minimum amount of throwaway that would occur as the system was developed. When would we be looking at doing that? It would depend on the development of the 175th Street area. If that development took off, it would require the system to be built more quickly. But we think we could get through the first 3 years without that. But 3 to 5 years, we'd need it. The developer that is looking at the area would like to have service by 3 years, so 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
The other thing about that is that, with it being the sewer line, I mean, there's impact fees and tap fees that would be involved with that, as
Correct.
well as the rates that are charged to the ratepayers of the Gardner utilities. So, these aren't the type of things that we would generally be looking to bond. That we would be looking for mill increases to bond, right? Yeah, that's right, Laura, I'm looking at you. You go on vacation for a little while, you sit back there with your arms crossed?
Try to disappear.
So sewer improvements
Mhm.
would be paid from your sewer funds, which right now you have very adequate reserves, and you would spread your $3 million over the useful life, so it would not be hugely impactful. And you always have the option of levying, but it's better if you don't.
Right.
Well,
I
the
mean,
other,
it's best practice is what you've used as precedent, where you would pay it from sewer as an enterprise fund.
Sure.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Are we still talking about, we will be talking next month about combining the enterprise, the utility enterprise funds?
No, we're going to
Commingling?
be talking about debt capacity as an,
Right.
but not,
Okay, maybe it wasn't next month. What I'm wondering is, we are talking about combining the sewer funds together at some point, or at least contemplating it, yes?
yes.
Okay.
When you say the 3 to 5 years for the build-up of the increased sewer, is that what I heard you say?
Our thought processes are, depending on the developer, of course, is that as the area grows in use at the 175th area, and desire or need for the sanitary sewer service goes into place, then it would be built within 3 to 5 years, yes, sir. Is that,
How much, I mean,
and our estimated cost is $3 million for that process.
okay, so what about, I mean, is there any building it and then allowing things to come in? I mean, being proactive with it and building it, spending the $3 million now, getting it all ready to go. I mean, would that, from an economic development standpoint?
It would be a huge incentive and open up a larger area for development. What it would also do is we could use that as part of an incentive agreement for the other property owners in the area, because they would then have access to a utility that is very expensive to put into place, takes a lot of time to get there, and then has to be maintained by the governmental entity. So their property value would increase greatly once that type of utility is in place. So it could become a tool to use to talk to property owners to get them to agree to voluntary annexation.
I've always said actions speak louder than words. One of the things that the folks at both interchanges and in the areas of concern that we've addressed at the dais here, one of their biggest concerns is that we do a lot of talking, but it doesn't get anywhere, and we're not doing things. If that needs to go in anyway, and it opens up all that land east of I-35, west of Clare, and south down to 191st Street, why aren't we considering that? Why aren't we acting on it? I don't see the downside of this.
I think
It's
we,
gonna-
I
it's
think we
gonna-
are considering it like.
But I'm,
right
well,
now.
I'm saying that I don't see why we're not doing it. I mean, it's required for the land that's being, that's imminently going to be annexed at 175th, okay? It's required for any development that's gonna happen on the east side of I-35. We have expressed as a council our
Unanimously.
desire unanimously to get to the other side of I-35. So why not fast track this? I don't understand why that would not, and we have the capacity to do it. So, why is that even a concern right now?
It just requires your direction, sir.
Real quick,
Go ahead, Rich.
I was gonna say, if the stars aligned, everything went perfectly, we looked at starting production or on, lift stations, everything else, Brian, what kind of time frame are we looking at from, we green lighted this thing to getting it in and the pump stations are ready?
I would say, would hope to have it up and running in probably the spring or summer of 2017, if you gave us the green light. I mean, the process to go through, that's a fairly long extension of
Right.
the KDHE approval process.
Right.
I would say 2017.
But we could get it, if we had to, if we had a developer who was ready to go, we could just go over to Walmart, at least in temp, to get,
And one of the things, the developer that's looking at this property expressed, he understands it takes time.
Right.
To get there. He said that he would be very willing to, do a temporary solution, holding tanks, those types
Okay.
of things in the short term.
Great.
Well, we got our act together on it.
Fantastic, thank you. Go ahead.
That was actually, my question was about the temporary.
Yeah.
And I think, that, to the development community, I think that makes us look like
We're doing
very
something.
progressive, yeah.
We're doing something,
We're ready.
yeah.
I don't like the temporary.
Well, I think we've got consensus on the dais to to move forward for planning for sewer.
And conversations with, the initial conversations.
Thank you.
With the property owners.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Is there any more direction that any of you need as staff members, based on the discussion this evening before we move forward more? Anything else? Was that clear enough? Cheryl, you look like you want to say something.
I do, I'm just waiting until you finish.
No.
That being said, what I'd like to do is, rather than come back to you on the 19th, is take some time so that we can have staff develop some of the requirements for infrastructure and kind of next steps, and then we'll come back to you and lay out that plan.
What's the time frame on that? You thinking November, December?
Let me touch base with legal, touch base with staff, and how about we give you an update in the Friday minute memo on when we can get it back to you?
That sounds great.
Okay, will do.
All right. Anybody else have anything?
Yeah, I just wanna add one thing. I know, both of these sub-area plans for 125th Street and 191st Street, I can tell you that, I know a lot of work by staff, the meetings, the work, the property owners that I've talked to have been involved are greatly appreciative. I think that it's a very positive move. I appreciate everybody involved. Brian, the other thing I would add is I think that there's been some recent conversations with some individual property owners, unannexed and annexed, that maybe had a bad perspective of how the city had operated. And I know both Brian and Larry have been kind of intimately involved in some conversations to change some of that perception. So, very appreciative.
Thank you.
You guys are doing a nice job of shepherding the flock back together and towards the city of Gardner, and we appreciate it.
Yes.
I sat through all but one of those sub-area plan meetings, and I think they were tremendous planning tools and position us very nicely, so.
Thank you.
So thank you all for your work. Cheryl, you have something
Yes,
else?
I just have one other thing I'd like to add. The work that you saw tonight involved a lot of different people and a lot of an economic development team, and I just want to take a few minutes to really thank Matt Wolf and Jeannie for the work that they've done. They've spent a lot of time helping make sure that we package this up. It's not really lifting that can be done by one department, and as you've indicated, we've definitely had Public Works involved and finance, and I just wanted to make sure that people that you wouldn't normally expect to be involved in the economic development aspect are starting to learn, and we're gearing up to do economic development, so just wanted to kind of point that out.
Michelle Leininger, make sure you let her know, sitting through these things and watching her stand in front of a room full of folks. Sometimes they wandered in with slings and arrows, and she handled it with grace under pressure, and really helped bring people around and engage them in a very good way. I don't know where she picked up all those skills from, but I'm glad that she's employing them here.
Thank you, sir. We'll certainly make sure she understands.
Thanks. All right, well, we've got time for a little break before the council meeting, so we will see everybody back at 7 o'clock. Thanks so much for coming in and sitting. Shoot, there's enough time for most of you to go to Ground House and get a cup of coffee if you want. Tim, I saw you back there yawning. Maybe you could use a little.
Jeannie, what was she told me earlier.
From the health fair?
I think so.
It was some conference and